What's up, everyone? Welcome to the first episode of the SwishWire podcast. This is the pilot. I'm the host, Justin Lastratosa, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Mitchell, Scobie, Jay, Nick, and Zach. Guys, say what's up.
What's up?
What's up?
Yo,
What's happening?
So,
Glad to be talk some hoops.
mhm. All right, so we're just going to get right into it. First, we're going to talk about some rookies. We're just going to go around and we'll just talk about some rookies we want to talk about. So, Mitchell, is there a rookie that has stood out to you so far?
All right, so I'm coming in with a little bit of a screwball. So the rookie that I'm going to sort of highlight is Jalen Smith of the Phoenix Suns. So Jalen out of Maryland, spent 2 years there. He was a freshman, kind of showed some flashes of floor spacing and some good shot blocking. But when his sophomore season is when he really sort of made his value. He was an elite shot blocker, showed some isolation and spaced the floor, shot 37% from three. He's only played about 7 minutes a game for Phoenix, which is kind of like a how can we tell how good he's going to be kind of thing. He draws a lot of Miles Turner vibes from me. In his short stints, he's been able to showcase that he can spot up at the three, not while mobile, but it's enough to provide spacing. He has erased shots at the rim in preseason, just completely swallowed them, which is great for him. And you got to kind of think, you don't just take at face value what he could become. You got to take at what he gives right now. And I think, 10 minutes a game from him, you can see a block, a made three, and energy. And that's all you really need from him.
Mm-hmm. I actually see Miles Turner a lot when he came out of the draft. I mean, shooting the ball and, he's shown some skill of putting it on the floor. Not a lot, though, and his rim protection is just elite. So, that pick from the Suns, I didn't really like it, honestly, because they had Aiden. And
the problem is he's not going to develop into what he could be behind Aiden. And that's just he's a capable four. He will not see more than 20 minutes at the four, and that's the only problem.
Mm-hmm. That was my problem with it, because Aiden's the five. He should be a five. Unless he's, one of the best backups in the league in a few years. I don't really like that for the Suns. Does anyone else have anything to add about Jalen Smith?
I just like the way that he wears those glasses sometimes, man. That's about it.
Very similar to you, the way you wear your glasses.
Yeah,
you
you
want
could
the
say
glasses,
that.
come on.
You could say that.
There we go. Like so much now. Thank you so much.
There's an uncanny resemblance there.
Mm-hmm. Jay looks just like Jalen Smith. The names are really the same.
Perfect.
Jay, Jalen.
Yeah. And
All right.
Yeah, because they both have J in them.
I like it.
All right. So, Scobie, we already know who you're going to talk about probably because, you're the Hornets guy. So, go along with it.
Well, obviously, I want to talk about LaMelo Ball. Obviously, this was a guy who, coming in, a lot of hype, some of the most we've seen for a guy coming in a while. And he's lived up to it. I definitely think, there were a lot of question marks, as far as his individual offensive skill set coming in. Was he going to be able to score efficiently at the NBA level? Because that had always been something questioned, throughout his international pro career. But it's quick. It's clicked quickly for him. Just playing in that offense, they have the personnel to play fast. And when you have a guy like Melo who can really push the pace, and force the guys around him to play to his speed, it does wonders for that offense. You see the high flying transition plays. His feel for the game is off the charts as a rookie. He just really pushes the ball, and really puts pressure on the defense. And individually, he's been knocking down the free ball. He's got swagger, confidence, the way he brings the ball up the floor. Every shot he takes, there's just so much flair to it, and it's really exciting to see, for a small market team like Charlotte, especially after, the departure of Kemba Walker, for them to get, what looks like their franchise guy in that really talented, deep, talented young core. And, with Gordon Hayward too, the Hornets, they're going to make a strong playoff push this year for sure.
Aren't they a top 8 seed already right now?
They're six right now. Yeah.
And with the East being the fifth seed is 500, they could easily slip in.
Yeah, that stretch in the East from the fifth, sixth seed down to 10 is really close and competitive. We're gonna see. I'm really looking forward to the new playing system with how competitive those teams are.
I like how everyone always talks about how Michael Jordan as the owner hasn't really, he hasn't been a good owner to this point. But over the summer, he added the best rookie in the class, and he also added the best realistic free agent that he possibly could have added in Gordon Hayward. They're two great moves that he made.
This was easily his best offseason as an owner.
Yeah, and I mean,
my bad.
You go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if Gordon Hayward could stay healthy, everyone was saying that was a huge overpay because it didn't look like he was what he was, even though like he was in Boston, he was the Utah Hayward, just so many guys in front of him. But like if he could stay healthy, he's totally worth $30 million. Like he's an all-star level player.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of the most well-rounded wings in the league. I mean, there really aren't many weaknesses in his game, and I think he really mediates that young core. Because last year, the Hornets, you could see the talent. I mean, you had that core, the guard spots: Terry, Devontae, Malik Monk, Miles Bridges, PJ Washington. They really needed a veteran in there to kind of mediate things, and Gordon's done a great job, and he's really rebounded massively. It's taken a while, but he's really back at that high all-star elite level. And I mean, really, I think that team's only big weakness right now is the center spot. If they can add a center who can play to their pace and run the floor, they're going to be really scary.
One of the things that I'll always love about LaMelo's game, and this translates into something that I've been watching a lot too, Emmanuel, quickly, is he utilizes not just the floater inside the three, push shots, teardrops, little runners. Anytime he's inside the 3-point line, it's liable to fly. And he's accurate enough with them. And you legitimately have to respect at some point when he takes a single step in from the three and you see his right arm launch up, because it's decent enough that you're gonna draw defense for it. And I've seen too many where he turns a teardrop into a downward pass to Washington or into like a light lob for Bridges. And it's just seeing him sort of nimble his way with those little tiny shots is just mwah.
His
Perfect.
feel for the game as a rookie is so advanced.
He's a 35-year-old in that body. He knows how to get guys out of their spots. That's great.
I really like what Coach Borrego has done with him too, because there was a lot of really unnecessary early criticism for the way he handled Melo's minutes, but I mean it's been so beneficial in the short term, and it will be in the long term. He's been strict with him, but you should be, because you can already see the difference. LaMelo forced a lot of turnovers early on. He made some questionable decisions with the basketball, and you see ever since he's been inserted into that starting role, there's a lot more trust on the part of Coach Borrego to keep him in the game longer and to consistently up his minutes. And the turnovers are going down rapidly. So, I definitely think, being strict with Melo early has helped him massively.
Yeah, that's what
I think that. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say that's what I love. A lot of rookies come in and they're just handed their minutes off of their name or off of their draft position or off of their hype or whatever it is. But LaMelo had to come in and earn his minutes from the jump. He wasn't just handed a starting role like a lot of people are. And I think
that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, I think there's a perfect time to let your young guys play through their bumps, or there's a perfect time to sit them down and say, look, these are mistakes that you're going to continuously make if I don't show you what you're doing wrong. Trey's a great example of that. Atlanta let him play through the bumps, but they didn't set him there for 48 minutes a game. They told him, look, if you're going to have 5 turnovers a game, you're going to sit for 20 minutes. That's just how it's going to go. The LaMelo experiment, absolutely perfect, because not only did they bring him in and tell him you're doing these problems, they announced it. They told everybody this is the reason he's not starting. You know what he did? Yeah. Bounced back, got rid of those turnovers immediately. I'm talking day and night change, intensity on defense. He doesn't just stand around and look at the ball anymore. He's there. He's engaged with his defense. I just think that, being open about people's shortcomings in that sense just pays dividends in the future.
Just holding them accountable.
Something that I really think will help with his development is if this Hornets team makes the playoffs. We've seen, he struggled a little bit early on. He was still great, but he struggled a little bit with turnovers, things like that. But he's bounced back from that completely. And, that's helped his game a lot. If they could get to the playoffs and LaMelo could, in his rookie year, get that, feel for the playoffs, he might not do amazing his first time, but to get that experience, that's going to be perfect. And that's where, Gordon Hayward comes in, leading them there. And also, I don't know how well they'd fit in the playoffs because the pace sort of slows down. But regardless, LaMelo in the playoffs, that's going to be huge for his development if they make it there.
Lately,
and also I think something else important is something people looked at initially with that draft decision is, they saw you had Devontae and Terry there already and questioned the fit purely because of that guard depth. Whereas I think that's been massive for Melo because that adds, this competitiveness, him having to really fight for that, to be the best guard on that team, and to earn that primary ball handling role, coming in fighting against two guys who really proved themselves last year. I mean, with Devontae being in the most improved race last year, I definitely think, that kind of that friendly fire, that competition was big for him early on too.
For the first time in his entire life, he couldn't just nonchalant his way into the starting lineup, and that unlocked so much for his game. He had to sit down and be like, damn, I can't just go off of my name anymore. I have to show why I deserve to be here. And he did. I think he not only showed why he belonged in that primary ball handler role, but he showed that he could shoulder a little bit more on offense too. And I think that's just going to be up and up and up going forward.
Mm-hmm. So, Jay, do you have any rookies that stood out to you?
Yeah, the main one I've been watching myself is LaMelo, like we just talked about. So I won't add too much. All I'll really say is him starting has clearly been beneficial to himself and the Hornets. And the season got shortened this year from 82 to 72 games, as we all know. And I think that the Hornets are a team that could really benefit from that. I think if they're in that like 7-8 range at the end of the season, they're a team that could have maybe went on a little losing streak at the end and dipped out. But I think now with the shortened season, they can kind of maintain to a playoff spot. And I think that when they get there, they can actually do pretty well because we know Hayward's going to get 20 plus. He's been in the playoffs before. He's a winning player. And LaMelo Ball, whether he's been efficient or not, has always been on the big stage ever since his first year of high school. So I think he definitely rises to that too. So that's all I really have to say about rookies myself.
There's something small to add there. The Hornets are 6-0 in back-to-backs this year. And I definitely think you can attribute that to the young legs they have over there. They got a lot of young guys in that rotation, so that's going to be big for them too.
And also, LaMelo Ball has been, in my opinion, the biggest culture changer in the league this year. That's just another thought to add to that.
I completely agree. This team, my bad.
You're good. The last thing I want to add is, even like the past years with Kemba there, it felt like nobody was really paying attention to Hornets basketball. Yeah. And now, there, he's put the buzz back in Buzz City.
And they have the best looking jerseys in the league.
They do.
I want to throw something out there. So I said this in our chat a few months ago, but with this team, it kind of resembles the 2019 Brooklyn Nets with D'Angelo Russell and me. They're a team that, they have a great culture. They have young guys leading the helm in there. They also have some veterans, that do their jobs in there,
and no expectations.
Yeah, no expectations. They both play at similar paces. The Hornets, they play faster than the Nets did, but they both play to that. And when they get hot, they get hot. They keep going. They keep that momentum rolling. And I just think like a team like that, that's a playoff caliber team. They have the talent in there. Some teams, they have more talent. Some teams have more talent than this Hornets team. But the way they play, the culture, everything like that, that's huge for this Hornets team.
One of the things I want to add about, because we're bringing up pace a lot for the Hornets, throughout LaMelo's like professional career, when he was overseas, I don't know if a lot of people got to watch in here, but there were games where he realized that just going balls to the walls 100% isn't always going to be the answer. He made opponents play to his pace. When he was on the Hawks over there, they weren't the best team in any retrospect. Like they were dookie. They were dog cheeks. But he made opposing guards play to his rhythm. And that's something that the playoffs allows you to do on a night in, night out basis. I think LaMelo is, and this might be a bit outlandish, but he's suited to carry an offensive load in his like 24, 25, 26-year-old in the playoff. Like I can see him being not only the primary ball handler, but one of the primary facilitators and scorers for Charlotte going like into his prime.
Do you think he could be a number one on a championship team?
I think if he can get to the point where so here's the thing. My main gripes with Melo right now still kind of has a shaky shot selection. It's improving every game though. I will give him that every single game. It gets better. He's an engaged defender. That doesn't mean you're instantly a good defender. That can improve because again, he doesn't weigh a lot. His lower body's kind of unstable, but that is all things you can improve on. He's a young Yeah, that's the thing. Nobody's got the booty like Kyle Lowry. So going forward, LaMelo definitely can become a number one offensive option. And this is like super outlandish for me to say, but he can become like a really above average defender. That's
his length is perfect for that. And honestly, I do think LaMelo can be the number one on a title team. Obviously not right now, but like in the future, I think he can. Obviously, there's not many players that really could do that. But like for me right now, there's only around 4 guys who could do it in really any situation they're in, which is Steph, LeBron, Kawhi, and Kevin Durant. And there's just pretty much everyone else. They need, not a perfect situation, but they need a really good situation around them for that to happen. I feel like LaMelo lands in there. Like I think he's going to need a really good situation to be, the guy on a championship team. But I think it could work in the future.
Kevin Durant doesn't need a perfect situation, huh?
No, I mean, okay.
Okay.
Obviously Kevin Durant was on the greatest team of all time. Okay. But I mean, what we all know he could be the best player on the championship.
You like to call him LeMickey. You like to call him LeMickey, and you're gonna say Kevin Durant can win wherever he goes.
LeMickey is a joke. LeMickey is a joke.
Let's move on to Zach's rookie.
Yeah,
Zach, get a little too crazy.
Zach, we know who you're gonna say, so go for it.
Patrick Williams, obviously on the
Hardaway Jr.
That's such a surprise. I didn't see that one coming.
Of course, yeah. I kind of shocked all the listeners here too as well. But Patrick Williams, man, he was a guy, number 4 overall pick. Everyone hated it right off the bat. Everyone was reacting right away. Me as a Bulls fan, I chose to just sit back and let it all play out because this is a whole new front office, a whole new coaching staff. I didn't want to react right away. I wanted to trust them until they gave me a reason not to trust them. But Patrick Williams is a guy who came in and even before the draft, he's a guy who fits the modern NBA and the way that the NBA is going perfectly. He's a guy who can do everything. He's at 19 years old. He's already built like a truck. He's super like jacked and he's got huge legs. He's strong. He can defend. He can rebound. He can shoot. He's got nice touch on his floaters and his runners in the lane. He can finish at the rim. And he's been like I'm not going to say he's been a surprise because I didn't really have a lot of like super expectations coming in, but he's been a guy that I'm not going to say like the Kawhi comparisons are there, obviously, because the guy moves like Kawhi when he's on the court. Let's be real. He looks like Kawhi when he plays. I'm not going to sit here and say that he can be a guy who can be a finals MVP and carry a team to a championship. But Patrick Williams is going to be a guy who's going to carve out a role for his entire career. We're going to look back on him in 15 or 17 years and be like, hey, this is a guy who hooped his entire career. He's not going to be a guy who had like a one breakout season and then he dipped. He's going to be a consistent contributor for his entire career.
So as a Bulls fan, are you happy that you guys picked him then?
Oh, yeah. Well, mainly because of the versatility that he gives our team, because he can play like multiple positions. And like I said, that's the way that the NBA is going, is positionless basketball. So I can come in and play multiple positions and defend multiple positions is huge. And that was the big thing coming in was everybody knew that his defense was going to be what it was, but his shooting stroke and his finishing and touch around the rim has been a huge like plus. Like it's just icing on the cake at this point.
Now, this is going to be no offense to the Kawhi comparisons, but do you agree with the comparison of a juiced Paul Millsap, of a Hawks Paul Millsap? I see he doesn't exactly have. In my eyes, Patrick Williams doesn't have like that.
A quicker Paul Millsap.
That's
I see where you're going.
He doesn't have the shifty mobility of a Kawhi, but he has that strength that Millsap had in his Atlanta days, where he gets to his spots regardless of who's in front of him, and he can bang, but he can stretch too. That's the other thing about him. I see him as a guy who fluctuates so much between the 3 and the 4 that like you don't even know what to call him as a combo at that point. Because like you said, his defense, that's where that comes in. I think that's where he can solidify he'll swat the hell out of a wing, go back down a 5, come back, guard the primary ball handler, go back and forth, go guard their power forward, come up for their 2 guard and block him. Like that's the thing. He reminds me so much of a guy because I think he's only around like 230, 225 right now. Anyway, he reminds me of a guy who can add so much weight down here that he becomes an immovable 6'8" guy that people think that, this is an easy post up, and no, he gets that set right back.
And sometimes that can be a bad thing where you don't really know if a forward is a 3 or a 4. Like, I don't want to throw Aaron Gordon under the bus, but he's kind of an example of that. Orlando, where you don't really know where he fits with that core. But Patrick Williams, with the rest of the core that we have, he's like a perfect fit. And the thing that impresses me the most about him right away, even the first game I watched him in the preseason was how patient he was. He doesn't force anything. He doesn't let the other team like rush him. He just gets to his spots, and he knows what he's good at, and he sticks to it. He doesn't try to do anything outside of his role. And I think that's a huge asset moving forward, especially from a rookie. I mean, you don't see that like, ever really.
Mm-mm.
You know, I made a post about Patrick Williams the other day, and you mentioned this already, Zach. You know, he doesn't have a flaw. Like whether it's on defense, you know, he could guard on the post, he could guard on the perimeter, he could guard multiple positions. Offensively, he could create, he could play off ball, he could shoot, he could get to the rim, he could do it all. He's really like one of the smartest rookies in the entire class. I really do think Patrick Williams will be the second best player in this draft. Like, I think that hold up. I think that Patrick Williams could legitimately be the second best player in this class. I'm sorry about that. Something happened on my computer. But I think he could be the second best player in this class. I mean, when you look at this draft class, I mean, a lot of people were like, it has no star power, but like, I think it has more than people gave it credit for. Like LaMelo Ball, Patrick Williams, as I said, James Wiseman, Anthony Edwards. I think there's like, this is going to be a really deep draft class, and I think Patrick Williams is going to be towards the top of it. So, Nick, do you have any rookies that you want to talk about?
You just mentioned James Wiseman. He's had a bit of an up and down year, I would say, for the Warriors. He's been in and out with injuries and COVID to start the year. But one of the things that shocked me is I don't watch every Warriors games, but it feels like whenever I do, he just forgets how to catch the ball sometimes. Like, he has really bad hands that I didn't know he had coming out of the draft. Like, he was always said, or his scouting report always said, good hands, good finisher. He can space the floor a little bit. His jump shot's a little slow, but I mean, that can be worked on. It's nothing major. He just looks like a rookie this year on a team that's ready to contend. I think that's the best way to phrase it.
Yeah, Weisman was supposed to be a safe pick to be a contributor now.
Yeah.
He has looked like a 60 overall raw prospect. It frustrates me because he has all the tools to be an elite defender. He's got like sideways mobility, perfect. He's got great length. He's got good core strength. He just doesn't utilize it. His jump shot, slow, mechanics are good. He knows his spots, forces them all the time. His post game, a little unpolished, but he's an athletic freak who could probably put it down on most guys, just doesn't do it. I don't understand if it's a mental thing, if it's a Warriors don't want him to become whatever kind of thing. I don't know if it's Draymond pushing him away from that kind of thing, but he has just everywhere where I thought he would have strengths, he's disappeared, and everywhere where I thought his weaknesses would be hidden in the Warriors system have just been amplified. And he was a guy that I had a lot of hopes in coming forward, and he hasn't fulfilled what I thought.
That could be due to the fact that the Warriors have playoff hopes, you know what I mean? Like, they're a team that came into this year intending to compete. But I think this is the perfect place for James Wiseman because, like you said, he has all the tools to become an elite defender, and who better to mentor him than Draymond Green? Draymond is obviously like one of the most elite defenders in the entire league. And if anybody can take James Wiseman and put him in spots to succeed, I think it's him. And also, playing next to guys like Steph, Draymond, and Clay next year, there is no pressure on James Wiseman to be like elite right away. Yeah. I mean, there is because they're trying to win, but from an individual standpoint, he doesn't have to come in and be a star right away, if that makes sense.
He doesn't have to be like the LaMelo Ball peak. He just has to be. He has to be a good starter.
Yeah.
Which that's part of the issue, though, is that for his entire career, because where they said the Warriors came out and said, yeah, they wanted to get LaMelo, but they took Wiseman for the fit. That it's going to be the same thing as like Marvin Bagley and Luka Doncic from the draft 3 years ago. They're always going to be compared, and right now, based off how it is, it looks like the Warriors really messed up not taking LaMelo. But I mean, again, it's only been a third of the season. He hasn't even played that many games, so.
I mean, he's raw, but he also has, one of the highest ceilings of this draft class, without a doubt. And I mean, he has shown the potential, even in a small sample size. I mean, just the physical tools, really scream. Potential. We've seen him display that monster athleticism. You know, his length is unbelievable. And I mean, I think, you know, there are so many factors that go into the inconsistencies. You know, these rookies had barely any time to prepare for this season as is, and you know, for him to have to deal with COVID, and you know, to miss the vast majority of training camp, now to be, you know, he's missed the last, you know, 5-6 games. You know, it's difficult for him to find any consistency. And I think another thing that doesn't help is, you know, they lost the safety blanket in Marquise Chris with him going down for the year. So, you know, now more responsibilities fall onto him at an early stage in his career where he might have valued having, you know, another contributing big more.
For me,
Sorry.
for me, literally, like as Zach said earlier, Draymond Green is perfect for James Wiseman. And honestly, this might be a stretch, but off the top of my head, I don't know any player like ever that I would rather put James Wiseman next to for his rookie year. Like Draymond Green is one of the smartest defenders, like one of the 3 smartest defenders in NBA history. Like he could teach him so much. And, you know, going into the draft, Wiseman, he wasn't a great defender. He was a good rim protector. But besides that, you know, he didn't bring too much value on that end. But like with Draymond Green there to be able to mentor him, I think that's going to be perfect. And Wiseman, I mean, he's really raw right now. He's extremely raw. And, you know, he just hasn't developed a feel for the game, which is something he's going to have to develop. And I think for a Warriors team that's trying to get to the playoffs, I'm not sure what I would do with Wiseman right now. I don't know if I would rather start him or bench him. But, I mean, Wiseman, he's shown all the flashes. He's shown all the potential. Even though he's had, you know, some up and downs throughout his rookie year, I think Wiseman, his rookie year wasn't what I expected, but I still think he's going to be a star down the line.
Yeah, I think
one of the things
you're good.
Okay, sorry. One of the things that I think has hurt him is for the vast majority of this year, Kelly Oubre has been god awful. I mean, he's been horrible. They've had one of the worst starting lineups in the whole league because the Warriors want to play to a certain system, and they were both new to it. Wiseman didn't have training camp. Oubre was just forcing horrible shots. If he touched the ball, he thought he had to shoot it, basically. I don't think that I don't want to say spacing. That's not the right word. I'll say spacing. I don't think the spacing on the team was best for him in order to succeed the way that people had thought in the post or like on the move. But now with Oubre kind of turning things around, it's interesting I'm interested to see if they start him, if they bench him, how that impacts his individual play.
The thing that gives me the most hope in Wiseman is you can't teach physical intangibles like otherworld agility and vertical movement. What you can do is sharpen instincts and get that innate sense of what to do when the ball is in your hands and what to do without it. Draymond is literally the textbook definition of what to do with the ball in your hands and what to do without it. Wiseman, if he can take 10% of what Draymond is teaching him and apply it, Wiseman instantly becomes a top 15 center. And that's not like, this is me not trying to gas up how good Draymond is. This is the potential of Wiseman because his floor is like so mid because I don't think he can fall further than like a top 20 center if he doesn't give a single flying flip going forward. But his ceiling could very well breach that top 5 potential in like say 5 years from now. And like Justin said, Draymond is going to be the perfect individual next to a guy who has all this. It's silly putty. It's all this stuff that he can mold into the perfect player to help him win. Like the thing is, I don't think like, and this is like no offense to the character of Draymond or the Warriors going forward, but I don't think they want, to develop him to be the best he could be. They want to develop him to the best where he can help them sustain longevity and win. And that's perfect because Draymond's going to take this pile of clay and turn either a defensive anchor or a post spin technician who can also swat the hell out of people because Wiseman has such good fluidity down there, and extend their dynasty. And I think Wiseman is going to be that guy who extends it.
All right, so I'm going to get into my rookie quickly. Well, actually, I have 2 rookies. It's not going to take long, because these rookies, they're not big names. I just want to, shine light on them because I think they're like not even 2 of the most underrated rookies in the league. I think they're 2 of the most underrated players in general. So I'm going to start with Desmond Bain of the Grizzlies. Last time I checked, which was like yesterday, he has the highest 3-point shooting. He has the highest 3-point percentage in the entire league, like out of everyone. And it's not even like he's played 2 minutes the entire season. He's getting real rotational minutes. he's a big reason for the Grizzlies' success. I know they're on a losing streak right now, but like he's been consistent through all the losses, through all the ups and downs. He's been consistent. He's given great defense. He's been exactly what we expect him to be, an NBA ready player, a guy who's, if needed. I know he's starting tonight. I don't know if he started the other games, but he could start right away. He could hit shots. He's a solid playmaker. He's a great defender. He's doing everything you want next to a guy next to John Morant. And, Desmond Bain at the number 30 pick, that's such good value. And I know Scobie's so upset because the Celtics could have had him.
I wanted to say this. Add him to the meme list of players that get drafted by the Celtics and, are traded. Obviously, it happens before the pick. We know this. But it's still depressing because, man, I've got this entire catalog of rookies in Celtics gear that end up going elsewhere. I'm sick of it, man.
It's funny because Desmond Bain would literally be perfect for you guys right now, especially without Marcus Smart. Like, he would be so good for you guys. But, like, he's been exactly what we expected and better. And then the second guy I want to shine some light on is Shawn Tate of the Houston Rockets. He wasn't even drafted this year. He was undrafted in 2018. And then he went overseas to play some basketball. And, he did pretty good. And now he's in the NBA, and he's playing great for the Rockets. He's earned a starting role for them. He literally doesn't have a flaw. Actually, no, he's not a great shooter. But outside of that, he's great at getting to the rim. He's really mobile. He could play and guard 1 through 3. He plays with physicality. He could back down big men. He uses his body to advantage. He's super strong, and, he's great around the rim. And, I think with the Rockets team, they've taken chances on guys like John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, now Kevin Porter Jr., even though he hasn't played. And Shawn Tate, it's a guy that, you pick him up, he was from overseas. You pick him up for next to nothing. And if he does good, he's part of your core for long term. And if he does bad, you release him. And, he's done great for them. He's 25 years old, but he's still going to be part of their core. And I just think for the next 10 or so years, he's a guy that's, built to have great longevity in the NBA. All right. So now we can move on to the next topic. We each made a mock trade for different teams around the league. So we're just going to get right into it. Mitchell, what's your mock trade?
Okay. So as the resident Raptors fan, it hurts me a lot to see Lowry put his house up for sale. So one of the things that I think Toronto emphasizes is if we're shipping players, unlike other than DeMar, we want to make sure that the players are happy where they land. So I've set up a Philly trade and send him home. I'm sure it would be one of the few places where he would really enjoy it. The other one would be the Clippers, but they don't have squat to give us. So the trade looks like we're sending Lowry to the Sixers, unfortunately. And just to match salary, we'd be taking on Danny Red, the worst shooter. Mike Scott, and then we would hopefully be picking up either Thibault or Maxey. Some fans swear to Jesus that Maxey is going to become the next all-time great. So I understand if our only return is Thibault and a first, but I would like Tyrese and Mattis and a first. Here's my dilemma is, in my opinion, Lowry puts them at an Eastern Conference final berth. I still don't think that they dance very well with the Lakers. Don't get me wrong. Love Lowry. Love him very much. He would be 3rd/4th option on the Sixers. You would hope that Simmons would be able to take a tertiary playmaking side, because this is just my personal opinion. I think Lowry initiating the playmaking would serve better, as Simmons would be able to divert a lot more energy onto high post initiation and being able to defend the second best player. Problem is, from my standpoint, I don't see what we flip Mike Scott and Danny Green for. We could ship him for a contender for some late picks, sure. But this is more focusing on Thibault and Maxey, who, given Toronto's ability to develop players, could just become part of our new future core. The pick is just sort of as like a cushion because, again, a lot of people downplay Lowry, but he is one of the best. As soon as he gets there, your team instantly upgrades to that next level of, if you're a crappy team, you probably become a chance at a playoff team. If you're a playoff team, you make your conference finals. If you're a contender, you just like your chances a lot more because you just got the man who's going to take 5 charges a game, who has a very luscious booty, who's going to space the floor a lot better for you, and is quite possibly, and this is a stretch, one of the most underrated playmakers in the league today. So my trade to recap: Danny Green, Mike Scott, Thibault, and Maxey, and a first to Toronto for Lowry straight back. You could throw in Terrence Davis or Thomas just to get that spacing, because Danny Green, as much as it is a meme that he can't shoot, when it counts, he can hit a couple threes for you. So
Well, depends on what you mean by
when it counts. I know I'm not going to bring up Game 5 of the 2019 Finals when he shot 9% from 3, but Thibault and Maxey would be the core of that, and then to match salary, Mike Scott and Danny Green. I think that is one of the places where Lowry could land where he'd be genuinely happy. But other than that, that's what I've got.
I think, honestly, with that move, the Sixers make the finals. As you said, I don't think they win against the Lakers, or if the Clippers make it. Jay, sit back, because I know you're going to get mad about me saying the Clippers in the finals in the same sentence. But I don't think they'd beat either of those teams, but I mean, you're getting to the finals, and you have a much better shot with Lowry than you do now. And I think right now, with the core they have constructed, I think the Sixers have a very underrated chance at making the finals. But Lowry, it just boosts it even more.
This could very well be the best that the Sixers ever get. This could be where they click the most. So capitalize on that now, because I love Embiid. He's currently my 1B for the MVP. It's 1A and 1B right now. This might be as good as it gets. You can't depend on his health. He might get really frustrated with how things are going. So bringing in a guy like Lowry, who this is some undermine tampering stuff. Embiid and Lowry have been friends for quite a while. So if you were to be able to, bring in a guy where he likes, likelihood that he resigns, he's happy there, he brings you an increased chance of winning the finals. I just see that as a W for Philly, and Toronto gets back rebuilding pieces.
My thing with this is we've heard Jimmy Butler talk about it from the 2019 season, is how all year Philly played one way, and that was with the ball in Ben Simmons' hands. And then Jimmy got there, and in the playoffs, Brett Brown flipped and was like, hey, we want to put the ball in your hands more. So if they were going to make this trade, they need to make it as soon as possible so they can implement and try to fit Lowry in and have him and Simmons both handling the ball a decent amount so that they don't have to, get to the playoffs and say, okay, we're going to flip the entire way we play. And so I think they would need to do that. If they were going to do this, they need to do it.
Here's the promiscuous part about this trade. You'd have a lineup of Lowry, Curry, Tobias. I would put Simmons at the 4, but have him as a playmaking 4, and then Embiid. That is a death lineup, no matter what way you look at it. I'm saying that team can clamp you, shoot you out of the building. It's there for playmaking. It's there for spacing. My gripe is, I don't know if Ben Simmons buys into that role. I don't know if he's comfortable with taking we're going to make you a tertiary playmaker who occasionally posts up, but is our transition go-to guy. I don't know how you pitch that to him. I don't know how you pitch him that a 34-year-old is going to come in and take your spot, basically. I don't know.
So here's my thing with Ben Simmons. I don't want to go too into depth with this because this is a really advanced topic. We're going to have to go into, talking a lot about it.
Later podcast topics.
I just want to say quickly, unless if the Sixers don't make the finals with this core, I think there's a huge chance that Ben Simmons gets traded, either from him requesting a trade because, he's not happy with his role there, or with just Philly moving on, saying, this isn't going to work. We peaked. We're just not going to work with Ben and Embiid anymore. We're just going to, take our chances to get someone else. I think, and if they trade for Lowry too, Ben might not be okay with that. We don't know. So, I mean, I think there's a good chance that unless this team makes the finals with this core that they have right now without making any Lowry trades, I think Ben Simmons could request a trade or just get traded in general this offseason.
Yeah.
But next up, Scobie, I think you're going to use the trade exception here, so let's see it.
No, actually, I'm going to go elsewhere. So I'm going to look at Dallas and Brooklyn here. So as we know, Brooklyn has had some serious defensive struggles since the big James Harden move. We're talking, worst defense in the league type of stuff going on down there. And, that's something they're going to want to address this year because that really puts a hindrance on their chances this year. And the window ultimately is only so large with that core. So, I mean, obviously, they want to add defense, at the big spots and on the wings, they want to add that everywhere. But specifically, I'm looking at the wings here, and as far as Dallas goes, we've seen how they've underperformed this year, and I think a lot of that can be attributed to the fact that they really direly need, another primary ball handler, because Luka could really benefit from that. He's a guy we know would be more efficient off the catch, as a shooter, and really he just needs some of those ball handling responsibilities to go as well. So the deal I'm going to suggest, obviously other pieces would be involved here, but in principle, Spencer Dinwiddie for Tim Hardaway Jr. I think Spencer Dinwiddie, obviously he's going to miss the rest of the year with the ACL injury. But in the long term, considering Dallas is, already looking like a team that might not end up making the playoffs, they can afford to bite the bullet and have Spencer sit out a year if it means they have his bird rights and they can bring him back long term, and they can integrate him into that core. We've seen them take a chance on injured guys before, obviously with the Porzingis deal. So it wouldn't be anything new to them. And I think really, if you bring in Spencer and you give him an extension, that could benefit them massively in the long term. Spencer's a more than capable playmaker. He's a great ball handler. I just think he'd help take that offense to a whole nother level, and really take some of the ball handling responsibilities away from Luka. And then on the Nets end, Tim Hardaway Jr. really helps them, on the wings. Defensively, that's another guy who helps them, switch on the wings. He provides great spacing. He's a guy who can give you 30 on any given night. He's inconsistent, but if you put him in a system where, you have all of those scorers, that's really going to take some of the pressure off him. I just think, if you surround that deal with the right pieces, perhaps those two at the center, you could really make something incredibly beneficial for both sides with that trade.
Not only does that give Mavericks like a tertiary playmaker, but Spencer can get the ball in the hoop too. That's another scoring punch that they could use.
20-point per game guy.
And the funny thing is, like, they're missing the presence of Seth a lot on the Mavericks this year. Not to say that Dinwiddie could replicate that, but he gives a different dimension than just another guy who can spot up and get hot. Like, Dinwiddie can create, and Brooklyn has people who can create already. It's not like adding another one of that mix really elevates them. So like you said, a switchable wing who doesn't need the ball in his hands to operate and can defend in Tim Hardaway Jr. That's perfect. I think that's like not like a lateral move, but like both teams shake on it and just don't regret the move that they made, kind of thing.
And I mean, I also think, something people definitely undervalued with Seth last year. Seth is a really underrated ball handler. He and there were stretches where they were utilizing him as a ball handler. So having Spencer come back and bring some of that back would be great for them too.
I like this move for Dallas for a couple reasons. One, because like you said, they're looking like a team that could potentially miss the playoffs this year. So making a move for a guy who's injured doesn't really impact them at all, or at least they're standing for this year. But next year, I think they're going to realize really fast that the way that they play and the system they run with the ball in Luka's hands 99% of the time is not going to work. It's essentially just playing him like he's James Harden. And James Harden made a lot of great runs, but he eventually, we realized that he never actually got over the hump. And Dallas is they're gonna realize that the way that they're doing it, it's not sustainable, and they're gonna have to make a change. So getting a guy like Spencer, even though he's coming off an injury, if he, like you said, they took a chance on Porzingis coming off his injury, and we have to see how that plays out. But if they do it with Dinwiddie and he comes back to 95% of it, what he was, and he can take that ball handling responsibility off of Luka, and he can put the ball in the cup and do all these things that he can do, it would benefit them greatly in the long run.
Well, something that also gives me major faith in Spencer is he's torn his ACL before. This is nothing new to him, and the second time round for him, this is going to be a considerably smoother rehabilitation process. So I have no doubt in him returning to full strength.
Spencer is literally exactly what the Mavericks need, in my opinion. Like, a lot of people talk about, they need shooting, they need more defense, and yes, they do need a lot of that. But Spencer Dinwiddie, the Mavericks need a secondary playmaker. Luka, it's going to relieve so much stress off him if he has Spencer Dinwiddie. And also, Luka's a much better shooter off the catch, too. He's not shooting great this year. Everyone knows that. So if they could get, a secondary ball handler, to take some pressure off Luka, get Luka in his spots at times when he needs to. I think that'd be perfect. And, just to get the ball in the hoop, a closer for them, which we've seen sometimes, they need a closer. They don't have like Luka. He can be the closer, obviously, but like it can't just be Luka. You got to have other guys. Tim Hardaway, he's inconsistent. Spencer Dinwiddie, he's one of the most consistent closers in the league. So I think for that reason alone, there's just no real reason for them not to do it. And then, on the net side, as you said, they get more offense. Tim Hardaway, he's not an abysmal defender. He's solid. It just gives them even more offense. For them, I think it depends on what direction they want to go in. Do they want to get defense, or do they want to just keep stacking up on the offense? And with this one, they keep stacking up. So I think that's a really good trade for both sides. Does anyone else have anything to add about that deal? No? All right, Jay, what's your trade? Oh, my bad. Who's that?
What were you going to say, Mitch?
No. I was like, go ahead to the next.
All right.
We're good.
All right. Jay, let's
All right,
go.
I got a blockbuster for the listeners. Let's go ahead and send Bradley Beal to the Denver Nuggets for Gary Harris, Michael Porter Jr., RJ Hampton, 3 first-round picks, and 3 pick swaps. I think the Wizards are obviously they're one of the worst teams in the league. We know this, that it's a lot of it's been with injuries and the COVID protocols and that, but they're not going to do anything this year, and the Nuggets have not lived up to expectations either. It's time to shake it up and give them a 35-point per game scorer in Bradley Beal. Him and Jokic would be the best offensive duo in the league. I don't think that it's close. And I just think that that's a win for both sides. Washington gets 2 good young players. Michael Porter Jr. has shown flashes of like a 20-plus point per game guy. And we've seen RJ Hampton look decent too. Gary Harris, he's not washed up by any means. He can still play, but he's not the player he used to be. So, but I think Washington getting back those pick swaps, and 2 good young players would be good for them to kind of start off a rebuild. I mean, we got a Wizards fan in here. Justin, would you take that trade or no?
I would take it in a heartbeat. So, when you look at this trade, it's not going to happen. We're not going to get, 6 first-round picks for Bradley Beal plus Michael Porter Jr. But, if that trade were to happen, I would be so happy because, obviously Michael Porter Jr., we've seen everything, It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when he's going to break out. And this season he pretty much has. But, he could be, our next, big player. He could be.
Would that be a trade that's a win for both teams?
It depends. If the Nuggets could win, get to the finals or something with Beal, I think they win it. But I think we definitely win this trade because, Michael Porter Jr., as I said, we get all those picks, which is self-explanatory. But one thing that, I really like is RJ Hampton. I wasn't too high on him coming into the draft. I thought, he didn't have much outside of his athleticism and, he's a project. But with Russell Westbrook, I'm not saying RJ Hampton would be the next Russell Westbrook. But under him, a guy that, relies on his athleticism, a lot like that, I think, RJ would blossom under that. He's an athletic freak. He could develop into a good defender as well. And, I feel like under Russell Westbrook, obviously I want him gone because of that contract. But, under Russell Westbrook, I think that's, the perfect mentor for him because they play in such similar ways.
Michael Porter Jr. is teetering on becoming the second scoring option for Denver. And this is no exaggeration. The dude could definitely do it. That would be a fleece for you guys.
If you're a Nuggets fan, would you accept this or no?
No. And I'll tell you exactly why. Because
would anyone, before you continue with that, we'll listen to that in a sec. Would anyone in here accept that if you're a Nuggets fan?
I just wanted to say, I think another way of looking at this is the potential of restructuring the trade scenario so you have Jamal Murray as a centerpiece. Because that could, considering the value of Michael Porter Jr., that's a thought too.
All right, yeah. What were you gonna say, Mitch? You had your thoughts.
So Porter, okay. This is no offense to Jamal Murray, but he's not gonna bounce back to bubble Jamal, and I think that's become apparent.
Playoff Jamal.
Sorry, playoff Jamal in the whole retrospect of that. But like Scobie said, Jamal still has value in himself. I'm not saying enough to just completely swap out Michael Porter, but I think Washington, if that trade happens, they kickstart a rebuild 5 years in advance. They don't have to worry about shedding through, drudging for that next young player who could become the next. They could say, screw it. Let's go pick up like somebody for Westbrook off of like ridiculous. Like they could just throw away Westbrook to the Wolves for them to deal with, because not Timberwolves. Sorry. I meant to say just to the Wolves in general, but Washington gets a great return in that one. Michael Porter could become that franchise centerpiece. The reason I see Denver might do that is if they want to bank on the fact that, Jokic has plateaued to the point where he is right now. I don't think he is. I think he can still make improvements. And they think that, crud, this core might not get it done. Let's bank on superstar power to get us there. I think they dance with the Lakers. I don't think they beat them with that, kind of core. Like we all said, Gary Harris isn't exactly the most steady contributor, but he's still a guy who's a spark plug if you need him to. Not that you can depend on that, but that's such an interesting route to look. As a Wizards fan, Justin probably swipes that trade immediately. As a Nuggets fan, you step back and you evaluate, will Jamal make a jump? Will Michael Porter show that he can be a 1B, a 2? Will Jokic plateau? You have to consider all these things. And are those picks going to be worth much in the future? Are you going to immediately drop off the next coming years and those picks will turn into good players? Or is Denver going to continue to battle around that 4, 5, 6 seed if they lose going forward? So that is a great trade to consider for both teams, because it's sort of like, it's a Hail Mary for Denver and it's a blessing in disguise for Washington. That's what I'll say at that.
What you just said, it is a Hail Mary for Denver, because I think this would be a move that could put them into a trading frenzy where they trade for Beal and they don't win, and then they make another move.
Scatter. Yeah. I see that.
Them into a frenzy, and then all of a sudden they've abandoned all of this that they've built up at this point, and they've got Beal and Murray and Jokic and nobody else, and they don't know what to do. So that would be my take on it.
Yeah, it comes down to whether or not they believe that a Murray, Beal, and Jokic core, because on paper that sounds like that could dance with the best in the West. But when it comes down to it, if Jamal continues to sort of shrink in the situations where we expect him to be as big as he is, if Beal doesn't, this is the other thing, you could get a hold of Beal, and in that Denver system might not be the 35 score. He's not going to be a 35 scorer when he gets there, but he might not even be a 30 a game guy when he gets there. The whole landscape could change. He might not be used to playing with a guy like Murray, who kind of dances between that combo system and where Jokic is the primary playmaker. So if I'm Denver, I'm looking at it as, this is what we've built. If guys improve, is it good enough? And if you say no, you go with this deal. If you say, I still believe in our youth, you laugh at Washington's face and be like, sorry, that's not happening. I think Washington looks at it and just smiles either way. Like that trade, they'd be like, if they say no, oh well. If they say yes,
I would accept that in a half second. But
when that was.
What did you say, Kobe?
No, don't worry about it. It's fine.
Okay. Sorry. All right. So Zach, what's your trade?
Okay. So my trade is kind of interesting. It also involves Kyle Lowry. Shout out to Mitchell. So let me preface by saying this. I don't think this is realistic. This is just a scenario that I came up with in my head 5 minutes before we jumped on here, and I want to throw it out to you guys and see what you think. So there's been a lot of talk about DeMar DeRozan coming home to the Toronto Raptors. But what if the Toronto Raptors shipped Kyle Lowry to the San Antonio Spurs and paired him up there? So my trade scenario is LaMarcus Aldridge and Derek White for Kyle Lowry and Terrence Davis. Throw in picks wherever you want, but that's the trading principle, is those 4 guys.
I mean, I think we could all agree that. Actually, no, I'll let Mitchell talk first because he's the Raps fan here.
Okay. I love Derek White. I love the proposition that he brings, because he reminds me a lot of a new age Tony Parker. He is capable of being a floor general. He's coming off an injury right now, so this doesn't look too good that I'm saying this, but he's capable of being a floor general. He can be a tertiary scoring option, and given the right environment, I think he could be a sound defender. Aldridge is a little too old for my liking for Toronto, but I see the idea of shipping Aldridge there, because Jakob, Oh, Jakob is playing some of the best basketball. And this is to quote a man from RGC. I won't say who because this was a little offensive to him. He is the worst offensive player, but one of the most elite defensive players. And that is to a T. Jakob Poeltl doesn't exactly scream, make up for Aldridge's offense, but the dude can anchor a defense. And I think if Toronto were to do that trade, it would to be not as a way to build upon winning from this trade. It would to be this is where you want to go, Kyle. We will respect your wishes. Try to get a pick back from them kind of thing. Interesting that Terrence Davis is added because a guy like Pop, who would look at his temperament and tell him, no, get out of here. I don't even want you, could probably settle him down to like a capable 2-guard who just locks into his niche. And I think that would be great for the development of Davis. I just don't see the allure for Toronto to do it unless they're getting back like a first and like a protected first, like something that would be interesting.
What I was thinking here, my reasoning behind this whole trade is originally I had it written down here, but I didn't throw it out in my original statement, was that the Raptors got 2 seconds in return too, because just from the sense that Lowry is the best player right now. That's why they would get that draft compensation. So from the Spurs standpoint, you do this because you give Pop what he wants at heart. Pop wants to compete. He wants to try to build the best team possible, and Lowry and DeRozan would give him that in like the current sense. Long term, it's not the best move for them, obviously, because they're giving up Derek White, who's locked up on this contract now. But from the Raptors standpoint, you're getting Derek White, who just got locked up on this contract.
Yeah.
So you're getting out Lowry, who's 30 plus, and he's probably going to walk this summer for Derek White. And all of a sudden, you have your backcourt of the future in Derek White and Fred VanVleet. And I think both of those guys could fit together pretty well because they're both great defenders, and I think both of them can play off the ball pretty well.
Talking about backcourts in that trade, I mean, look at the defense in San Antonio with DeJounte Murray and Kyle Lowry. That'd be something to see.
My only gripe with, again, because Aldridge could easily just be our 5 until he fizzles out of existence kind of thing. I would like, because we're including Davis, do you think this is a little outlandish if Devin Vassell was added to that?
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be so nice for Toronto.
That'd be
man.
so outlandish.
Okay, here's the thing. Because
I don't think it's outlandish. They have so many young guys at that position.
Justin, I don't know if you know the timeline for San Antonio, but it is far and in between from a bunch of young guys to aging vets. Like the ages between them, like DeJounte Murray, Johnson, Poeltl, yes, within those 2-3 years of age, but adding Lowry to that DeRozan core lets you genuinely compete as a playoff team.
Yeah.
Vassell is a building block for the future for them. He's 20 or 21 right now. I don't know if he's exactly going to be worked into that lineup in the given future.
Because you have Keldon Johnson there, Lonnie Walker.
Thing.
Like, it's kind of an awkward fit for Vassell long term.
Here's my thing. So Devin Vassell, he was never someone, I still don't think this to this day. I never really thought he'd be a star. But he has the makings to be one of the best role players in all of basketball. Like, he's one of the 3 or so best 3-and-D prospects, coming out of this draft. And, there is a logjam at the position with, Keldon, with Devin Vassell. But when you have, that level of talent.
Lonnie Walker.
Yeah, Lonnie too. But, I mean, Lonnie could easily be inserted as, the 2-guard there. But when you have, Devin Vassell, a guy with – I think he has a very high floor. Like, I don't think Vassell will be a bad player. Like, at worst, I think he'll be, like, a Gary Harris type player. His shot's been falling a lot this year. He's hit his shots at a high rate this year, even though he hasn't played too much. He's been towards the bottom of the rotation, but he's still hitting shots. At worst, I think he's like current Gary Harris. At best, like, I honestly see a Chris Middleton type, but I don't think he'll reach that. Realistically, though, I think he's going to be one of the best role players in basketball. And for Kyle Lowry, I mean, do the Spurs have enough cap space to re-sign both of them?
This is the other thing is eating if it's going to chip into, because Toronto has a max and a bit to work with next season. White would chip into that a little bit, and Toronto has the
probably have room for a max though.
Yeah, Toronto here has the leverage if San Antonio would like to get that window to compete kind of thing. So if I'm Toronto, I'm offering them Lowry and Terrence Davis in exchange for the original package. Just add Vassell, because I see, and this is like the best situation for Pop too, because he no longer has to worry about the log jam that he has at that position and developing young guys. He can ride out the last couple years of his coaching career competing at a playoff level.
And Pop likes Kyle Lowry too. We've
Yeah.
seen them together in the past, whether it's at an All-Star game or with the USA team. Yeah, I think that him and DeRozan reunited would be just really good for the Spurs.
But I think you know, as far as Pop and what Pop wants, I think he's content competing with what they have. I mean, I definitely think, you know, the Spurs really the last couple years have been about finding a perfect balance of, you know, what Pop wants and the future of that organization beyond Pop. And right now they have that balance because they, you know, they still have, you know, DeRozan and Aldridge and Mills and Gay, all these veteran contributors. And the young core really is, you know, something they can build around post Greg Popovich. And I just don't think that's worth, you know, blowing up for the sake of a first round exit.
That's what I was going to say. Like, Lowry and DeRozan, you know, obviously, you know, great chemistry, great relationship. And if the Spurs have the cap space to re-sign both of them, I think they both re-sign. But at the same time, they're not going to really go far at all. So, honestly, I would rather just keep that young core intact. If you could get, you know, Kyle Lowry for, you know, the original trade, which is Derek White and LaMarcus Aldridge, I'd do that. But I don't think I'd give up Devin Vassell for that. But I think it's time we segue into our next trade. So, Nick, what was your trade?
Well, honestly, Kyle Lowry's pretty popular tonight, and this is another one out of left field. Going back to the Nuggets, I've always thought that their biggest issue this year will be defense, and then Jamal Murray regressing. So what I put together is Kyle Lowry for Gary Harris, JaMychal Green, say Bol for salary, or so Toronto could take him as a project and a pick. That way you slot Jamal into a more natural 2-guard role. You can close out games with Kyle Lowry, Jamal Murray at the 2. You still got Will Barton at the 3. MPJ can be a 4, and you've got Jokic at the 5. That's a really lethal offensive group with enough or more defensive power than they have right now. I'm not sure it gets them over the hump, but anytime you can add somebody like Kyle Lowry to a group that just made the Western Conference Finals, you give them a better chance.
Yeah, let me comment on that quick. You can go, Scobie, if you want.
I like the Lowry fit in Denver a lot, purely because you know, of how heavily Drew Holiday was linked to them. You know, I think he fits a very different but also a perversely similar archetype. You know, that defensive guard, you know, who can facilitate and you know, put the ball in the basket. So I mean, I like the fit from that point of view, and I also do like the idea of Jamal Murray as a more natural 2, because I mean, we see his game slowly shift in that direction. So yeah, I'm a fan of the Kyle Lowry fit for sure.
Yeah, what I was gonna say, when I proposed the Bradley Beal to Denver, I was also thinking of Kyle Lowry too. I think it's just a good fit because we've seen Kyle and Van Vliet can play combo guard together very well. And Jamal, like, he can play point guard or shooting guard, but I think he'd probably be better off as a 2 than a 1. And having Lowry there, I think he'd just be a big help to offer more consistency to Jamal's game, take less pressure off, take the ball out of his hands more. And yeah, I just think that that's a win now move for Denver. I don't think that they'd want to give up Bol, even though they don't play him too much all the time. His minutes are very inconsistent when he does play. I think that they still see him as a future piece in that team. So I don't know if they'd give up Bol, but Gary Harris, and I think you said JaMychal Green, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that. And maybe just, throw in like a first and a second instead of Bol if the salaries work there.
I want to talk about this from the Raptors perspective. I love it for the Nuggets perspective, but for the Raptors, I mean, I would do this pretty. I mean, it depends what other offers are on the table, but if it's just this offer, I like it a lot. Bol, he would end up like the greatest player of all time with Toronto's developmental system. I know Denver, you know, their development is amazing as well, but like we've seen Toronto with guys, you know, Siakam, just a lot of guys. It's a huge list to name.
Howell, Van Vliet, so on. OG.
Yeah. And Chris Boucher. Yeah, Chris Boucher was the guy I really wanted to talk about because, you know, he's, you know, he's a skinny big guy. You know, we're seeing him having a career year right now. He's kind of fallen off a little bit, but you know, he's still been great. Bol, he could be a star in
Oh,
Toronto.
that front court would be so fun, man. Boucher and Bol.
Mhm.
I want to
Two
hear
unicorns.
Mitch's thoughts on this
Okay.
because he's a Raptors fan.
So the moment Bol gets to Toronto, we're locking him in a room with Teresa Rich, Dan Stolzman, and John Lee, who are our conditioning coaches, our development team, and our development staff.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is with Bol, he's such an intriguing prospect. Don't even get me started on how we could utilize JaMychal Green. Like, that's another whole thing. But we could legitimately turn Bol into a franchise center, like instantaneously, like in 2 years.
Easily.
That would pay dividends ridiculously. The only thing I would draft capital would have to be a back on that one, because there is the possibility that Bol doesn't have that ceiling. I don't also like, and this is no offense to guys who are lengthy and skinny and tall. The health is not always the 100% bank that I can on those guys. Not to mention Toronto doesn't exactly have the best history with big men going down. Bol would be, I think, very quickly like the second option the moment he got there. And this is no disrespect to Stinky P, but Bol seems like he could just like ignite if given the keys. And he is caught behind a rotation in one of the best bigs in basketball. So sorry, like can't really develop it initially in Denver. I like the fit of Lowry in Denver a lot. And this is coming from a guy that doesn't want to see him go that bad. He would flourish as their primary playmaker next to Jokic, like from the guard and the center position. Jamal at the 2 would just be so much of a more natural game for him, and Lowry wouldn't have to worry about, like, Lowry would lock in and just be like, I'm going to facilitate and I'm going to play defense against their guards.
And you talk
don't have to
longevity
worry
for
about that.
Lowry's career. I think playing in Denver adds another couple of years to his career.
I think playing in Denver where he no longer has to worry about a scoring load, because this is the unfortunate reality of Toronto right now. They depend on Lowry to ignite for 20 points.
Yeah.
And you
especially
can't
in the
depend on a
playoffs.
34-year-old for that. I'm so sorry to Lowry, who it has to piggyback offense when we get to the third quarter and we can't get a split, and he's the only person that scored. There were 4 games this year so far where Lowry has scored like 10 or more points in the third quarter, and the second most help he's gotten was from Alex Len when he stepped on the court for the first time for Toronto, and by Malachi Flynn, who is now on our 905 roster. It sickens me to know that Lowry has all this on his shoulders, and I think Denver would like allow him to just play basketball the way he wants to do it.
I mean, that Nets game the other day, Kyle Lowry's the reason why you guys won that. He made 3 after 3.
They poked the bear, and Lowry did not want to go home on that. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
What I'm going to say about, I just wanted to say this quickly about the Raptors. I mean, Raptors fans are always saying, imagine if Chris Boucher was like 21, 22 years old. You get Bol, who is literally like exactly what, you know, Raptors fans mean by that. It's literally like the exact parallel to that.
You throw Boucher and Bol in a room in the off season, make them get on that nice chicken steak diet. 20 plus pounds. Oh,
I would give him the Giannis diet.
That'd be so.
Remember how, they made Giannis eat like 10,000 calories a day or something crazy.
Oh,
like
if you bulk those boys up, that front court would be so fun. And I know Mitch thinks the same thing.
I want to take, if I'm ever in Toronto when this is all done and I see Boucher, I'm gonna take him to a McDonald's. I'll buy him 20 McDoubles, and I'll just be like, eat all of these right now. Just eat them all.
And you'll drive them to the nearest gym too.
I don't care. We will go to goddamn Planet Fitness in Buffalo. For all I care. The dude, if he could put on 15 more pounds, it would make the world of a difference. And that's something Bol would be able to do.
I wish you'd make me an offer.
I'll get you 20 McDoubles if you want, Zach. I got you.
Closest one.
All right, so I'm going to segue into the last trade, which is my trade. And this might sound like a minor trade, but for me, as the Wizards fan I am, it's not at all. I mean, we literally have like the worst defense I've ever seen. I mean, we're not the worst statistical defense. That's the Kings still, I think. But we have like nothing on that end of the floor. So this trade's with the San Antonio Spurs. We're sending Ish Smith, who he's a serviceable backup point guard. You know, I love what he brings. You know, he brings effort every single night. He's, you know, a scrappy defender, but at times, you know, his shot selection gets a little wacky. So
There's been times where he's been your third best player this year. Honestly,
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
has.
And there's also
Honestly,
times
second best.
over our
Next-
starting
okay.
point guard.
Send him
That-
to what his 11th team now. Jesus,
Yeah.
he's been all over the place, huh?
And he's only been in the league for 10, so like he's been on a new team pretty much every year. So Ish Smith and Mortiz Wagner, he's shown promise in some games, but other games he's just been like flat out bad. He's shown offensive promise, nothing really defensively, and then 2 second-round picks for Jakob Poeltl. So Mitchell said earlier, someone in our group chat said Jakob is like the worst offensive player ever, but like he could anchor a defense, and that was me. I mean, like he's literally like
I didn't want to call you out for saying that.
Yeah.
he is like one of the worst offensive rotational players in the entire league. But like his defense, it's so good. Like he's such a good defender. He's ranked as the second best rim protector in the entire league this year.
Really?
Yeah, not in terms of like blocks or anything, but like he holds his opponents.
Percentage differential at the rim, yeah. He leads.
He's an amazing rim protector. He could come in, he could set some screens for us. But it's mainly just the defense. Like, first of all, I mean, when you look at our center rotation with Thomas Bryant going out, I mean, it's Robin Lopez and Alex Len, and I mean, no offense to them, but like, that's unbearable almost.
Talk to me about unbearable rotation players.
Well, I mean, I would rather have Tristan Thompson and Daniel Tice than Robin Lopez and Alex Len.
Oh, wow.
I think
it goes deeper than that.
Tristan. Oh my God.
Check Creek, baby.
We have Raul Neto. So I mean, Jakob Poeltl. I mean,
how about that? Let's take turns naming bad bench players. We could go all day with our
You
team.
guys could go all night. Jeez.
We would be here for like 2 more hours. But so Jakob Poeltl, he's just gonna come in. He's gonna bring some defense. I feel like we would kind of have to overpay for him. Ish Smith, Mo Wagner, 2 second-round picks. That's not really like too much, but like for Jakob, that sounds like a lot. But we need any defense we could get. There's no real guy on the trade market right now that could like transform a defense. And Jakob Poeltl, he's not transforming.
I could think of one. What if Victor Oladipo ended up in Washington?
I mean, like the only scenario is like Russell Westbrook, but like that would never happen.
If
that
you,
would never happen.
I mean,
back to Houston.
Just no. I think I was gonna also say this. Oladipo could be nice for the Mavs. I don't know. You'd probably have to throw Tim Hardaway Jr. there, right? Salary wise.
Yeah.
I don't know what else. Maybe like Josh Green or something if they want a young guy back. But yeah, I mean, hey, there's another mock trade right there. But yeah, Oladipo is a guy who I wouldn't be shocked if we see move around, but I just don't really know where yet. I think Miami.
I feel like Miami
Dallas,
is the only place.
Yeah, I feel like Miami. I think
I would bet on Miami, but I wouldn't be shocked with Dallas if that makes any sense.
I think.
Back to the original trade proposal here. Why would Antonio do this? Because we touched on their log jam at other positions already. They don't have like a big man. You want to say Jakob is that for them, and he's on an expiring, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
He's on 3 years.
Okay,
3
so
years.
they have him moving forward. So why do they do this for Ish Smith, who's probably going to be there for a year or two and then he's gone, and Wagner? I mean, why do they want?
Listen to what I'll say. Listen to this. So I know I kind of trashed Mo Wagner a little, but he actually has some serious, like he has some good potential. He's not going to be some franchise guy, but like when you watch him play, you see, he's pretty mobile for a big. He could shoot, he could get to the rim. He's a great finisher, and as of right now, he's definitely not better than Jakob. But like I feel like with the Spurs, he could develop to. He has a higher ceiling than Jakob, in my opinion, by a good amount.
I mean, you said it yourself. He's straight up not as good as Jakob. I don't see why the Spurs would
he's
take
not
that
good.
All that I got out of that was that Spanish from a biased Wizards fan. It's
not biased. All right. So Jakob is better than him right now. We all know that because Mo Wagner.
He says sitting in a Wizards hoodie with his name on the back.
Okay.
Do we really need to spend this much time talking about Mo Wagner and Jakob Poeltl? Let's move on to the next topic.
All right. So we'll move on to our next and final topic because no one wants to talk about my guy Mo Wagner.
So you don't even want him on your damn team.
Yeah,
exactly.
All right. So we're gonna move on to our next and final topic. So, this is a series we have called Over Under. So we could do. We're gonna do this with a lot of things. For
It's a
example,
very original idea. We came up with this one ourselves.
yeah. So, for example, I'll ask Scobie. Scobie, is Tristan Thompson overrated or underrated? Give your answer.
Overrated, baby, all day.
Okay. So it's
Underrated. That man pulls baddies.
okay. So he's underrated because of that.
He's
But
got one. He's got one.
so we're just gonna go around the group. So ESPN, they came out with a power rankings. We're gonna go around. We're gonna go from 1 to 5. We're gonna ask if they're overrated or underrated. The teams, where they have them at, things like that. So, for example, Mitchell. So the first team in the power rankings is the Los Angeles Lakers. They're at number 1. Do you think they're overrated or underrated?
They've gotten to a point where they have games that they just sort of coast through, and it bites them in the ass in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
Then-
it does.
But then they flip it on again. So I think I can't call them underrated because that they're championship favorites, and I can't call them overrated because every time somebody has any form of criticism against them, they come back the next game and they just smack the crud out of whoever they're playing. I will say that the performance from Davis has been overrated lately because he's been Lakers fans know, and Nick knows that AD hasn't exactly been, the caveat that we know he can be. And I'll give him credit because he is sort of shaking off the rust from, I can't remember how long he was out for with whatever injury he had. I'll do that because I don't really think he was.
What does this mean? Do you say he wasn't injured?
I think Davis is using a lot of I'm not saying he's pulling a Paul George, but I think Davis has had a slow start. And
Paul George is faking
dude,
injured
oh
as
my-
well.
Here's the
shoulder.
difference between
Oh, I
Anthony
need to
Davis and
ice it
Paul
again.
George. One won an NBA championship, had 70 days off after playing in the finals hurt.
Yeah.
The other one uses shoulder surgeries from 4 months ago as an excuse.
I think that again, rest is a big factor in Davis becoming what he was. And I think it's still a small sample size because Davis can still get back there, but I would call I can't call them I can just call them even. That is the only way I could call the Lakers right now.
Yeah.
All right, Scobie, what about you?
Yeah, I think it's not really a team you can go over or under on. Being a 1 is exactly where they should be. This is a team that is the heavy title favorite, and I think that's a pretty consensus opinion here. We saw what they did last year, and we saw them improve on every level. And even if there are questions about Anthony Davis, I think like many players this season, he's a guy who is going to benefit massively from that mid-season break because that could be longer than people think with a lot of the rescheduling. I think, come playoff time, he'll be the Anthony Davis, who's sitting on, all NBA teams. I think the Lakers will be fine and they're the heavy title favorite right now.
All right, Jay, we already know what you're going to say. So what about you?
Underrated, baby. League of their own. That's what I have to
Underrated?
say. Yes,
I don't
sir.
even think that's possible.
The fact that they're even being ranked with these other teams is a crime. They should be number 1. Put a lock beside it for the rest of the year. You can get that key and unlock it if LeBron or AD go down. No, matter of fact, only if AD goes down. But as long as they're healthy, I don't want to see you re-rank number 1. It's the Lakers, and you can rank 2 below after that.
I don't even think. My bad. You can go.
No, all I have to say is I've watched LeBron since 2010. This is arguably the best basketball I've seen him play. It's the least amount of minutes. He's getting better every single year. I wouldn't say it's the best version of him, but it's the most complete version of him, if that makes any sense. He's got that 3-point shot up percentage-wise and attempts, all again with the least amount of minutes he's played. I think that come playoff time, that team's going to flip a switch and it's going to be scary for other teams. Look at their depth, adding Trez and Schroeder, guys like that. There's no team that can even push the Lakers to more than 5 games, in my opinion.
All right, Zach, what about you?
I don't want to just repeat what everybody else said, but I think everybody else already covered it. I think they're properly rated. This isn't a team that you can say they're over or underrated because everyone's picking them as the title favorites, and I deserving of that title as of now. So until they show us otherwise, I don't think we can move them up or down. If they can't go up, I don't think we can move them down.
All right, next, our Lakers fan, Nick. You think they're over or under?
I think that they're, in terms of rankings, they're, obviously appropriately rated, but I think they have a much higher ceiling because, like we said, he's missing his second game tonight with Achilles issues. He's had issues with it all year. Whenever you hear the word Achilles, it's scary, obviously, because you look at KD and, guys like that who have torn their Achilles. You don't want that to happen, obviously. So for me, I have no issues or concerns about AD being the 30-10 guy he normally is in the playoffs. He will get back to that. It may not be exactly 30-10 because, we now have Trez and Dennis to score where last year we didn't. He may be at like 26, 27, but he's going to be Anthony Davis. He's a top 5 player when he's healthy. The playoffs last year showed that. LeBron, like Jay said, I'm willing to go as far as to say this might be the best version of LeBron because the IQ is much higher. He's added a legitimate 3-point shot. He's shooting 40% on, at one point it was 7 attempts a game. I mean, he was chucking them like crazy. I don't know if it's still that high, but he's still at 40%. Defense hasn't really taken that big of a step back. He's still, if you need to get a stop, he's still one of the 5 best options for a game-winning stop, in my opinion. He's just on another level. I think he's becoming the runaway MVP favorite. Obviously, that's a little bit biased, but
I don't think it's biased. I think that's fair.
All right, my bad. You go.
I'm not going to weigh in on the MVP on that one. That's just, I'm not going to touch that one.
We'll leave that for another day.
We'll leave that for when John gets on.
All right.
But I just don't think this. I'm not going to say that no team's going to push them past 5. I think the team that has the best chance of beating them is the Clippers. I think that's a 6-7 game series. But other than that, I don't see anything.
Dude, the Clippers will not even threaten the Lakers.
I'm not saying they'll threaten them. I'll say they'll give them the best chance at being threatened.
I think, and that's
All right.
it.
Look, let's not get into the whole Clippers Lakers conversation that could go on for hours. We'll save that one for another day.
Don't know why it could. Honestly.
All right. I'm gonna make this quick. We pretty much went over everything about the Lakers. They're literally the perfect spot. They're not underrated, like Jay said. They're in the perfect spot, and I mean, there's nothing really to add here. I mean, Anthony Davis, as Scobie said, he's gonna be massively benefited by that break in the All-Star break. Yeah, they're perfectly rated. So. Now onto the second-ranked team, the Utah Jazz, 16-1 in their last 17 games. Mitchell, over or under?
Okay. Oh, this is the problem because I'm going to go with under at this point. Because last year I had my this is stupid of me to have my doubts over a guy who shares my same name, but Mitchell kind of had me spotty. I didn't know if he could flip that switch and get to the next level in the playoffs. I'm not saying the bubble was an anomaly. I'm just saying I don't know if he gets to that extent, but so far he's looked great.
When
Rudy
you say underrated, do you mean power ranking wise or just they're not getting enough hype?
I think that now that they're getting the media attention, it's kind of ridiculous because they've been the past 5 in a row, it's oh, you guys are so great. It's well, where were you for the last 5? Where were you for the 4 before that? I agree that where they are, number 2, I'm going to switch up on what I said. Number 2 is a little overrated because I don't think they're going to sustain the second best team in the entire league. But I had to wake up and realize that Donovan Mitchell is here now. He's not, going through the slumps. He's not working it out. I think he's here and he's arrived at where he's going to be. The fact that Rudy is helping on offense now is an eye opener for me.
Yeah, let's talk about Rudy Gobert's game, man. We don't have to go too in depth. This year, there's been some flashes where he hasn't looked amazing, but for the most part, he's been great.
Don't even get me started on how Bogey's been next to him because Utah has finally got a cohesion where they look like they can play as a team and not just sparks of here. Clarkson, oh my goodness, the dude has been insane for them. So I think that where they're listed right now is overrated, but don't sleep on Utah making some moves in the playoffs is all I'm saying.
Scully, what about you? Over or under?
I think power rankings wise, right now that's appropriate. I think generally by the greater NBA fan base, they're underrated. Because this system is sustainable. I definitely think it's sustainable, and they have the personnel to make sure that happens. I mean, there just aren't many holes in this team, really. You know, they're well coached. The roster is deep. You know, you've got a six-man candidate. You've got your clear-cut guy in Mitch. You know, Rudy Gobert is, you know, oh my God, you know, he's just one of the elite bigs. You know, Bogey is really hitting his stride right now. You know, Mike Conley has been a revelation for them in year two of his Jazz tenure. You know, there were a lot of questions with Mike last year because he came out struggling. But I mean, we saw, you know, especially in the bubble, you know, we really saw him get going. And he's one of those guys, but you know, that wasn't a bubble fluke. You know, Mike Conley is that guy. You know, he takes a lot of pressure off of Donovan Mitchell. And you know he's massive for them. And the fact you see the Jazz, winning games without him right now just tells you how sustainable this offense is, because they shoot so many more threes than they did now. And as long as they keep firing, and you know, as long as they keep putting pressure on the opposing offense, you know, they're going to keep this up, and they're going to be scary.
All right, Jay, what about you? Over or under?
For the Jazz, I would say that they're just right. I mean, now we see them getting that media attention more. If they weren't getting it, like they were maybe 10 games back, then I would say that they're underrated by, you know, the majority of the NBA fans. But right now, I'd say that they're just right. They're 16-1 in their last 17 games, which is just remarkable. I don't know when the last time that's been done is. I mean, the Warriors probably did it in there.
Toronto
They did? When was that?
last year. And the year
Okay,
before
there we
that.
go. There we go.
Frauds.
There we go. That answers my question. But yeah, they've just been the hottest team in the league so far this year. It's just been really fun to see. I think that they're 20-5 right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Donovan
Best
Mitchell
record in
is
the league.
yeah, he's elevated his game again. Ever since his rookie year, he just added little things to his game, whether it's scoring more efficiently, finding better spots on the floor, getting others involved. He's just been a fun player to watch for me this year. And yeah, that's why I think that they're even, I guess you could say.
All right, Zach, over or under?
Well, the other guys have touched on this. This question, over or underrated, is kind of subjective. It depends on how you interpret the question. Are they over or underrated in terms of their ranking at second in this power ranking based on their play right now, or do we really think that they're the second best team in the NBA? So, in terms of this ranking, I think they could be number one based on how they've played right now, because they have the best record in the league. They're 20-5 at the time of this recording. They've won 16 out of their last 17 games at the time of this recording. They're the hottest team in the league. So if this list is made on play right now, they could be number one. So from that aspect, I would say they're underrated or properly rated. We can acknowledge that a team is having a great season and also be realistic about their season. So if you're looking at this list in terms of championship contenders, best teams in the league, number two, I would say that they're overrated in that aspect, because I don't think that they could beat the Clippers in a 7-game series realistically. I mean, it could happen. Anything could happen in the playoffs. I think last year taught us that. But I think if we're just talking about this list, I think that they're properly rated or underrated at the number 2 spot.
All right, Nick, what are your thoughts?
Zach said it perfectly. It's just like he said, they can be a good team, have a fun season, while acknowledging that unless the Lakers and Clippers get matched up on the same side of the bracket, they're not a Western Conference Finals team to me. So I think in terms of championship contention, they're probably like the 5-6 range, you know, obviously beneath the LA teams, Philly, Brooklyn, and Milwaukee. So I would have them 6 in that sense. So they're overrated in that. But again, it's subjective how you interpret it. Zach summed it up perfectly.
Mm-hmm. For me, I mean, like, as of right now, like, for the season, I think they're underrated. Like, for the season, I think they've been the best team. But as a whole, as of right now, I think they're overrated. You know, like, I think this team, they have all the makings to be, you know, I think they're a top 5 team in the entire NBA, like, generally. But I don't think you could put them over the Clippers, you know, the Sixers, Bucks. Nets. I would take all those teams over them. But what I will say about the Jazz, I think they're one more wing away from being true championship contenders. A wing that could knock down shots, play some great defense for them. I think they're one of those away from being able to truly actually compete. And we don't really see teams a lot, go far without a superstar. I mean, last year, you could call Jimmy Butler a superstar if you want. I wouldn't say that. But other than that, we really don't see that. But this Jazz team, they have all the makings to do it without a superstar. The way they play basketball as a unit, they have, in my opinion, 3 guys who should be all-stars this year in Conley, Mitchell, Gobert. What?
Discussion for a different day.
Yes, that's a discussion. That's a discussion for our All-Star pod. But I think they have 3 All-Star caliber players. They have a legit 8 guys right now on this roster. And I think if you just put one more wing on that team, I think they could legitimately, I don't think they would win the title or even make the finals, but I think they could be in that realm of that perspective. But as a whole, they're still overrated right now because they haven't gotten that last piece. But for this season, they're underrated in my opinion. For the number 3 team, the Los Angeles Clippers, Mitchell, over or under?
The thing is with the Clippers is, like Nick has said, they're a team that could take the Lakers to 6 or 7 games. Not saying that they would topple them, but they're a team that could make that a competitive series. They've had some blips, but Kawhi and PG have come out and looked like they finally figured out how that duo works. I would say under, if I'm being 100% honest. The role players haven't been crazy at times. Batum has been insane for them. I did not expect this out of Batum at all. No knock on Beverly, but he's been more of a, foul hunter than, defensive stud for them when he's been in. But yeah, Kawhi and PG has made it click. And I think I know genuinely speaking that they should be, the LA team should be the 1 and 2 in the West, but I think underrated right now. That's where I'll leave it at.
Scobie, what about you?
I think a lot of it is really gonna come down to Paul George, as it has, wherever he's been year by year. If he can finally break, the playoff curse and produce at that all-star MVP level in a postseason environment, if he can do that, then yeah, this is a team that is legit, and this is a team that is appropriately ranked, because we've seen, that team has figured it out. Year 2, this team has really found how they can play to one another's strengths and complement each other in the long term. But I think once again, it's just going to come down to Paul George and his ability to sustain, number 2 on a championship contender type production in a postseason environment.
Nick, what about you?
Let me preface this with, it's really hard to give them any credit because, excuse my language, but fuck the Clippers. I said it earlier. They can push the Lakers. I think that they actually probably have a chance to win that series. Obviously every team has a chance, but they have the best chance. The reason why I'm actually concerned about them this year as opposed to last year, because they are shutting up and playing. They're not running their mouths. You don't have Pat Bev and Marcus Morris making fun of people on the sidelines for missing free throws. The media is not really crowning them like they did last year. You don't have Kawhi with his little crown dangling off his car keychain. They're playing basketball. So I think when you look at the grand scheme of things, they're the second best team in the entire league. So I think they're underrated in that sense. But and for this ranking, they lost to the Nets, they lost to the Kings. That's probably pretty accurate for them.
All right, Zach, over or under for the Clippers?
Do I not exist?
No,
you got moved down on my thing. You're going next.
Okay.
I think they're underrated from what because there's not as much attention on them this year, and that's how it should be with this team. They don't want to be playing in the spotlight. They don't want to have all eyes on them every single game they play. And it still kind of is, because every time they lose, they get slaughtered on social media, but that is what it is. But like Nick said, they're shutting up and they're playing basketball. And Mitchell touched on the Batum acquisition. That's been huge for them. This is just a really well constructed team, I think. And Paul George and Kawhi Leonard seem like they figured it out. They're both playing at an MVP level, but neither of them are going to be in the MVP race realistically because they'll just take votes away from each other because they're both spectacular. I think the biggest thing for this team has been Ty Lue, though. The offense just looks like it flows so much better. There's not as many ball stoppers out there. The ball's constantly moving. Paul George has the ball in his hands more, and he's
the pure hoopers. The pure hoopers.
Pure hoopers.
Clean Hezzy splash.
Clean Hezzy splash. That's what they needed. Paul George has the ball in his hands. He's taking on a playmaking duty for the team. Him and Kawhi really, and they're just playing really, really solid basketball, I think, and that's how it should be. They just need to play basketball, fly under the radar, and then when the playoffs come around, if we get to see the Lakers and the Clippers, I think all bets are off in that series. It could go 6-7 games. Either team wins, I think, realistically.
Here's the only thing that I want to say. I'm sorry, two things. Number one is, like we've talked about, you and I both said, they don't have any spotlight on them. I worry about in the playoffs when that does come, because we've seen Paul George fold under that spotlight, how that impacts him with all those expectations placed on them again. And then number two, they're like, for everything Ty Lue's done for the offense, he's taken away from the defense. Like they were top. I think they were one of the only two teams last year, them and the Lakers, that were top 5 in both offense and defensive rating before the bubble. Right now, if you give me a second to pull it up, my MacBook's being slow. They are second in offense behind the Bucks and 14th in defense. I mean, the defense has taken a hit. So that is a little concerning in terms of title contention, but again, they're still the second best team in the league. So if they can figure that out, then who knows what happens.
See, I don't like to read too much into ratings like that, because at the end of the day, if they're performing on offense, they just need timely stops, and they have the personnel to get timely stops. They've got Paul George, they've got Patrick Beverley, Marcus Morris, Serge Ibaka, Zubac at the rim. They've got all these guys to get the timely stops that they would need in a playoff setting.
All right, Jay. Now it's your turn. So over or under for the Clips?
Overrated. They are not the third best team in the league. The Lakers are better, the Jazz are better, and I would probably say that the Bucks are better too.
Oh, I wouldn't go that far.
I think they're not making it out of the West. There's not a chance.
There's not a chance is pretty extreme.
There's zero chance unless LeBron gets injured.
You're more biased.
No.
You're more biased towards the Lakers than Nick is, and you're not even a Lakers fan.
Oh my goodness.
I'm just trying to say I don't believe that they're if you want to say that they're the 5th best team, then sure, that's even, but they are not the 3rd best team in the league, in my opinion. I just think they're playing good this year. You got to give them credit for that. But I still think that they depend too much on Kawhi. And I know what PG has done this year numbers wise, but we saw what happened against the Mavs when Kawhi wasn't playing. And I know that that's only one game, but in the playoffs, Kawhi isn't going to be on the floor for 48 minutes. And if he has one off game, I'm not convinced that PG is going to be able to step it up and lead them to a win against a team like the Lakers or the Nuggets or the Jazz. So, yeah, I think 3 is a little high personally.
For me, for this season, I mean, I think 3 is a fine spot. I mean, I'd have the Jazz at 1 for this season. Lakers, Clippers, you could swap. I mean, they're pretty much even for this season alone. Generally speaking, I think they're underrated. I think they're the second best team in the league. Jay, you were talking about you don't think that like if Kawhi, he's not going to play all 48, and if he has one off night, you don't know about Paul George. Honestly, I do think this is Paul George's year for the playoffs. Like I know, like every year it's like, oh well, Paul George.
That's what you tried to tell me in the bubble too.
I never said that.
Yeah,
but
did.
He said a lot of people are like before the playoffs, he might bounce back. You know, he might do this, he might do that. This year, I feel like his main priority is bouncing back when it matters most. I think he'll do that. I'm not going to get too in depth, but Tyronn Lue, he's one of the Coach of the Year candidates in my opinion. This offense has flowed so much better under him, and this is just a better team than last year.
When
For,
Tyronn Lue looks down the sidelines and sees LeBron James on the other team, he's gonna poop his pants, man.
Really
That's
coached,
it. Like that's
literally.
it.
all right.
What were you
So-
gonna say, Zach? What were you gonna say?
Yeah, I was waiting for that.
Try again. Move closer to your mic.
Why is he pooping his pants?
Because
When he's-
LeBron's his daddy, man. He's the only reason that Ty Lue has a job.
So that's why. That's why.
All right, let's
All right. So, all right. So, the number 4 team, the
Matter
Philadelphia.
of fact, before we move on, you take AD off the Lakers, they'll still win the finals.
Okay. All right. Well, we're not even going to
Hey,
talk about that.
hey,
We won't
hey,
even.
hey.
We won't even talk about that. For
Yeah,
number
have
4.
have you seen what the Detroit Pistons do to the Lakers when AD isn't playing? Have you seen what happens in those games?
Who's next,
Josh
Philly?
Jackson. Yes. Yeah. Philly at number 4, number 1 seed in the East. Mitch, over or under?
All right. So in the hypothetical world that, Philly sustains this, Embiid goes on for his MVP trek, I think that this is perfect where they are. Because Embiid has made these strides. He's healthy now. We know what he's fully capable of, and it's fantastic to see. I do still think they're a piece missing, Kyle Lowry, over the hump to really get them there. But I think 4th, like especially with how they've been playing lately, how Embiid's been playing lately, it's really reasonable. Not to mention Tobias Harris is finally looking like Tobias Harris again. Not to say that he's going to be the difference maker, but he's still like an incredible guy for them. He's been playing not to expectations, but just he's approaching that line, and I think that's great for them. The caveat to all that is, Simmons looking a little less staggered than even his rookie season. And this is going to hurt John for him to hear, because he's totally going to listen to this segment from me. He's not going to just turn it off. But Embiid is looking like the guy that I'd want to retain out of the two of them if the future were to happen. And no offense to Simmons, man, but while that trade value is going up, I would ship it out while I can, kind of thing. So I think 4 right now, they're perfectly solid for there.
Scobie, what about you?
I don't want to give Philly any credit, man. I'm a Celtic fan, but this is unbiased opinions unless your name is Jay. So
Come on, man.
All right, so I mean, I like the Sixers. I'm as much as I dislike the franchise, I'm a big Embiid fan, and I think what he's shown this year, he's been capable of that for a while, and you could see the frustration boiling when we swept their asses out the playoffs last year. But Philly, credit to Philly in that new rebranded front office. They've put the pieces together. As much as we can, throw question marks at Ben Simmons, that roster is incredibly well constructed. It is deep. They have a very diverse level of talent, as far as age range is concerned. The young pieces and the veteran complements are a very good pairing. And I wouldn't be surprised if they came out the East. I really wouldn't. I think this is sustainable, and I think there's definitely a move to be made for Philly by the deadline. I'm not sure if we're looking at the final product, considering how active Daryl Morey can be. So I think right now, they're adequately placed in those power rankings.
Zach, what do you think?
Again, like I said on when we were talking about the Jazz, this is subjective. So in terms of this list, based on their play this year, I think they've absolutely earned this number 4 spot. They're the top team in the East, record wise, and the way that they've been playing, the way that Embiid's been playing, the way that the Rockers instructed, as Scopey just mentioned, they've got a good thing going here, and I think they've got a good direction here that they're going. But in terms of, do I think they're the best team in the East? Because that's what we would be saying that they are right now, because we've named 3 West teams, 1 through 3. This would be the first East team named. And come playoff time, I don't think they're the best team in the East. I would have them number 2 behind the Nets. I'm probably alone with that because I know a lot of people don't like the Nets. But in terms of this ranking, if we're just talking about how they've played this year, I would say this is properly rated.
All right, Jay, what about you?
I think that they're a little overrated. That's no hate on what Embiid has done and what Tobias Harris has done. I'm a huge Ben Simmons fan. I love Ben Simmons' game, but he's taken a step back this year. I mean, the defense is there, it is, but the offense, it's just scary. It seems like the expectation from everyone this year, especially, has been Ben may bring his offense to the next level. No one was saying he'd have a 40%, 3-point shooting, but everyone kind of thought he could maybe show it a little bit, become more aggressive, like we saw bits of in his rookie year. But he just is kind of taking a step back. I don't know. Scobie can kind of give me his opinion on this, but I would take Boston over them in a 7-game series. I don't know. Would you? You're a Celtics fan.
I'm a very pessimistic Celtic fan though, in general. Historically, I mean, well, let's talk recent history. It always seems we've had the edge regardless of roster construction. But there's just way too many question marks with Boston this year. I mean, I think, healthy we can match up, but Kemba's play style can be difficult to work into that offense in a playoff environment. And I'm just like from the matchups we've seen, I think I'd probably put my vote of confidence in Philly, as much as I hate to say it. Although, I definitely, much as I don't think this is the final version we see of Philly, I think there's moves to come with Boston for sure. And, I say that hesitantly because I say that every year and nothing ever happens. But, with the trade exception, I don't think we're looking at the final Danny Ainge masterpiece here. So, I think, a lot could change. But right now, sure, that's a series that could go 6 to 7 because we have the offensive firepower to do so. But the depth is certainly important. And how the hell do we contain Joel Embiid?
I mean, you didn't contain him. You didn't contain him last year, and you still swept them.
But this year, their roster, the last year, Tobias Harris was inconsistent. Ben Simmons didn't play in that series. The roster is so much better.
We've also seen Doc Rivers in the playoffs, though, not live up to his expectations as a coach.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for that. I mean, Doc Rivers isn't the coach people think he is, and he hasn't been for a while. But I just think overall that, Philly just, they have a lot of edges, in areas where we are weak right now.
Yeah, I personally would still take Boston over Philly. I'd take the Bucks, and I'd take the Nets too. I think Philly's a better team this year than they were last year. You can't deny that at all. That comes with, I know you just said yourself that Doc Rivers isn't the coach people think he is, but come on, he's better than Brett Brown. So, yeah, in that aspect, I think Philly is, like, in terms of the regular season so far, sure, if you want to put him at 4, you can. But if I'm looking as a consumer, as a fan, every team, I could name a bunch over Philly personally. Like I said, the Nets I would take in the East. I would take the Bucks. I take the Celtics. Who knows what Miami's going to look like by playoff time? And I mean, if you're talking overall power rankings, I would take Utah, both LA teams. So yeah, that's like what, 7 teams right there I'd take over Philly. And that's hate. That's no hate either. I love Joel and I love Ben Simmons.
If you just going back to Boston and Philly, if you want to go head to head there, and say the Celtics can match up to that team, as far as roster looks go. Brad Stevens is capable of outcoaching, Doc Rivers for sure. I mean, we saw that chess match of Brad Stevens and Nick Nurse last year. That's definitely something to consider because hopefully Brad Stevens is going to have a better, deeper rotation come playoff time too.
And we know Kemba hasn't looked himself so far in the few games.
Yeah, he hasn't looked himself. We're past that now. He hasn't played he's played one good game this season.
Yeah, but with that being said, in a 7-game series, Kemba's going to have at least one Kemba game. And Jalen, yeah, he is. And Jalen Brown has taken. I know Scobie loves Jalen Brown. You can't deny the steps that Jalen's taken in his game either. Like, normally in the past, you could slow Jalen Brown down a little bit if you're like someone like Ben Simmons guarding him. But now I don't think that he can be slowed down. I think he's going to get 25 plus on anyone in front of him. So I think
Yeah, but I think Jalen and Jason can still both get their numbers, and we still, we still fall short because we've seen that a lot this year. Just in Celtic games in general, we've seen those two get their numbers, and just the rest of the roster is such a failure to those two guys. It makes you question how far they can go.
For
yeah,
me,
but I guess
my-
it'll. Yeah, you're the Celtics fan. You watch the team way more than I do, so I'll take your word on that. But personally, I'm just saying for myself, I would still take Boston, which I don't think is too outlandish. Like, I think there's definitely a debate to be had there.
Yeah, it's not outlandish. It's not outlandish. That series could go either way. I'm just going to be
Yeah.
pessimistic because I don't want to, kill my hopes and dreams.
Yeah.
For me, for this season right now, I think the Sixers are perfect at 4. But generally speaking, I mean, for me just for me, I think the two LA teams, I think they're the top 2 by a pretty good amount. And then for 3, it's between the Bucks, it's between the Sixers, the Jazz, the Nets, Celtics, and I think the Heat, they're going to get back under their feet, and I think they're going to get back to that. Obviously, right now, they're not the 3rd best team in the league, but I think they'll get back to that. For me, it's 3A, 3B with Milwaukee and Philly. But I'm going to say just right because I think I'd give Milwaukee the slight edge because for Philly, I think there's a lot more ifs than Milwaukee because, I mean, Embiid, he's going to be Embiid. I'm confident in that. But, I mean, like Ben Simmons, he's hard. Like, you don't know what he's going to be really doing. His offense is just, like, it's hard. Like, I don't think you could really go to, like, win an NBA championship with that level of offense in your starting lineup, if you get what that means. But that's a big if. Ben Simmons is a big if. And also, I think it boils down to, since Ben Simmons, lacks offensive, creation really outside of on-ball playmaking, since he lacks that, I think it's going to come down to a lot of guys stepping up. Tobias Harris, he stepped up big time for them. Back to, Clippers Tobias Harris. I think he's going to have to sustain that for the playoffs. Who knows? I think he will. But, Seth Curry, ever since COVID, he's kind of slowed down a little, which was kind of inevitable because he was shooting on crazy splits. But I think he's going to have to, he's still playing good. I think he's going to have to get a little better, though. I think he's going to have to be like a 15-point-per-game guy. Shake Milton, I think he's going to have to sustain this level of play. He's kind of dropped off a tiny bit, but I think he's going to have to give, around 15. I think they're going to have to rely a lot on those guys to make up for Ben Simmons, who the defense could literally leave open on the perimeter. And Ben Simmons, he has to become more aggressive if this team wants to make it far. If all those things happen, I think they do make it out of the East, but that's a lot of ifs. And, I don't think all of them actually will happen. So I'm going to say just right at 4. I'll put Milwaukee one spot higher. And speaking of Milwaukee, we have our final team, the Bucks, at number 5. Mitchell, are they over or under?
I got to immediately go with under because we know what the Bucks are capable of now with like the short, like Drew has opened up so many more dimensions for them. Middleton's again, I think he's another 50, 40, 90 club member this year. Or maybe like by like a 0.04 percentage.
Nah, he's there right now.
Oh, he's there. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the consistency between Milwaukee with Milwaukee, even adding to their core right now, has just been phenomenal. I think don't like flambe me for this one, but I think they're becoming sort of like under the radar for an Eastern team because they're not getting a lot of immediate attention. I think the voters' fatigue for Giannis's MVP campaign is catching up to him. A lot of people are just like, yeah, he gets his numbers. We know. But they're looking like a team that, again, like I would put, not to say that they're in the same tier of Brooklyn, because I think Brooklyn's going to shake the barrel a little bit in terms of acquisitions. But Milwaukee's definitely, like, for the most part, a team I would put above Philly. I know Philly looks better right now, but I would definitely put Milwaukee in that upper echelon. So I'd say underrated.
Scobie, what about you?
Oh yeah, I think it's weird to say the Bucks can go under the radar, but they have in a very perverse way because the East is so much better than it was last year, and I think they've kind of got caught in that that whole evolution. No, I mean, Giannis hasn't, gone anywhere. This is still an MVP guy. Chris Middleton improves on a year-by-year basis. He's become that team's best facilitator. He's expanded his game on so many levels year in, year out. Of course, Drew Holiday has been an unbelievable addition for that team. He's so much better than Eric Bledsoe. And he's gonna make a real difference, in the playoffs, because that was where Eric Bledsoe was their biggest hindrance, or as Terry Rozier would call him, Drew Bledsoe. But he consistently in the playoffs he underperformed, and that really hurt them, in the big moments. And I think that change alone is going to be huge. And the depth isn't. I mean, you can make arguments for whether it's as good as it's been. But I mean, I think guys like Bobby Portis, especially him, he came out guns blazing this year, looking like a Sixth Man of the Year candidate. And even if the stats don't scream that, he's still definitely got a case. I mean, he's been great for them. I like the addition of Bryn Forbes. DJ Augustin hasn't been what they wanted him to be, but we all know what he'll do in Game 1 of the playoffs. This is a team that is more than capable of making it out the East, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were to do so. I think they're tired of falling short, and I think Drew is really a piece that puts them over the edge. So, underrated slightly.
Zach, what are your thoughts?
I think in terms of this list, I think they're properly rated. I would probably put them behind the other 4 teams that they're ranked behind. I think a lot of people are counting them out, like the other guys have mentioned, because just because of their past downfalls. The past couple of years, we've seen them fall short of their ultimate goal. And I think this team is going to go as far as Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday can take them. I think them putting the ball in those guys' hands as opposed to using Giannis like he's LeBron, and that's not how he should be used. Giannis is a big man at the end of the day. He should be used more like a traditional big man, not like completely. Obviously, you want the ball in his hands some, because he can put the ball on the deck and attack. He can put the ball on the deck and create for others, but you can't just have Giannis dominating the ball and attacking the rim and running into a wall 9 out of 10 possessions. You know what I mean? So I think having the ball in Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday's hands and having those guys creating and hitting shots, if they can if they can hit shots, that's a big question mark, because we've seen Chris Middleton, come up short a couple of years in a row now. He had a couple of good games last year, but he hasn't really been the co-starter that he needs to be for this team. But if those guys perform, I think these guys can go as far as they want to go. I think they can make an Eastern Conference Finals run. I think they could push whoever they play and eventually make the finals if everything goes right for this team.
Jay, what do you think?
I think this is the best team that Giannis has been surrounded by. I think we can all agree on that. If there's a year for the Nets not the Nets, sorry, my bad, the Bucks to, get out of the East, I think it's this year. But yeah, with that being said, I'm going to have to say that they're a little underrated. I'd probably just switch them in Philly around. If you're sticking to these 5 teams, I would have, the Bucks above Philly, just because, like, Philly, rightfully so, is getting a lot of media attention right now because the way that Embiid's been playing, the way that they've been playing, I guess, as a whole team too. But yeah, Giannis, I think Mitch said this too. The narrative last year was this man's going to be a back-to-back MVP. And now it's like, whether he's putting up 30, 15, and 5 with a steal and a block or whatever, like, people are just going to say, oh, okay, that's normal. That's nothing special. Like we've seen with LeBron, he's won lots of MVPs in his past, but now it's like there's been multiple years where he should have won MVP, but the only reason why he comes up short is because his name's LeBron James. I think that's starting to happen with Giannis. But I think that what you guys said about the Clippers was that the lack of media attention may actually be positive for them. And I think that could be the same with the Bucks. I think if because everyone is on Philly, and even though the Nets haven't played great this year, I mean, they're up 32 at half on the Pacers without Kevin Durant.
Poor Sabonis, bro.
But yeah, with that being said, like, the Nets and Philly are getting all the talk right now. And yeah, I think this is actually a plus for Giannis and the Bucks as a unit, because we're going to see them make a real push this year, and this could be the year that they get to the finals. So for those reasons, I'd probably put them at 4.
For me, I already said I have them at 3, pretty much tied with Philly. So obviously that's underrated, but I just want to talk about them for just quickly. drop coverage is easily their kryptonite. Obviously, we saw with the wall with Giannis. Yeah, I'll get into that in a second because I have some thoughts about that too. But drop coverage, that's a weakness. They can't they have arguably the best perimeter defense in the NBA. Drew Holiday, Dante DiVincenzo, Chris Middleton. Those are guys who are threats on the perimeter. And if they're not, closing out on shooters, I mean, that's not going to work in the playoffs. Like, I don't care if they play Boston. I don't care if they play Miami again. Worse teams than they are, they're going to lose if they let them shoot the ball. And also, I mean, Budenholzer, he has done more of this season, but it's not enough to my liking. As Zach said, get the ball in Middleton's hands. And Middleton, he should have the most ball time on this team. His shot creation is so underrated. Most people think of him as this off-ball guy next to Giannis, but he's the most underrated shot creator in all of basketball. He has so much versatility on that side of the ball, and just give him more touches, give him more reps. And we've seen people are like, oh, they don't really have a true closer. I mean, that's because he doesn't get the reps to do that. If he gets those reps pretty much every single game, grows into that role, he will be that for the Bucks. And I think he's the most underrated all-star level caliber player in basketball right now. And I think if the Bucks, if they stop drop coverage and, even if they don't give the ball to Middleton even more, just as long as they stop drop coverage, I think they make the finals. And if they give the ball to Middleton more, then I think that's the icing on the cake for them. I think if those two things happen, they're definitely in the finals. So I'll go underrated. Any of you guys have anything to add?
Yeah, I want to add something. I mean, as of the time we're recording this, it's February 10th. Justin, I know you've been on the pod, so you haven't watched your team play tonight. How do you feel about Alex Len and Robin Lopez being your fourth and fifth highest scorers tonight, having more points than Bertans?
Don't even say Bertans' name because at this point, I don't.
Why
Obviously,
don't you go grab his jersey? I know you've got it somewhere back there, you dirty animal.
my Bertans jersey is downstairs, and it's safe to say that it was a tremendous waste of money because $80 million for what he's been doing is just a disgrace.
I wanna have another pod where we talk a little bit more about the Wizards. We don't have to devote the whole thing to them because they're not that hot of a topic. But Bradley Beal had 24 on 8 of 20. Russ had 23 on 9 of 19, and after that, Rui had 15, and then it went 9 from Bertans, 11 from Alex Len, 9 from Avdia, 13 from Lopez, 0 from Smith, and it just bad, man. They were. I had my eyes on the game because they were within single digits of the Raptors at the end of the third quarter. They lost by 22. Washington's just a really bad team, sadly, because
you don't have to embarrass the man live on the.
I know
you're a dumpster fire.
I know Hoop Supply, Zach and I at the beginning of the season we said how this Wizards team could actually be pretty decent, but I mean with the COVID protocols, the injuries, it's unfortunate, man, having Russ and Brad out there playing hard and no one else stepping up. It's just sad.
We got to wrap this up, but one thing I'm going to say about the Wizards, I'm sure we have a podcast about, this team coming soon. Just the one thing I'm going to say quick. I mean, we are the worst team in basketball. I don't care that we have Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal. When you watch us play compared to other teams like the Pistons and the Wolves that might be in contention, we are the worst team in basketball. That's all I'm going to say.
Free Russ and Brad, man. That's all.
It's free Brad.
Brad don't want to be free. That's the
true.
problem. Brad don't want to be free.
That's true.
He don't want to be free.
Mm-hmm. All right, so this has been the SwishWire podcast. You guys could subscribe to us on YouTube at SwishWire. We're on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter.
Anywhere
SwishWire.
that you get your podcast, baby, we're there.
Mm-hmm. And Facebook. We have a Facebook too. Shout out Andrew.
Yeah, the boomer in the group.
It's your grandma to like it.
Put your face closer to the mic, Zach.
I said get your grandma to follow us on Facebook.
Yes, sir.
We're branching out to all audiences.
Check us out though, SwishWire on everything.
We're international, very, very much so.
Interviews, podcasts like this, all coming weekly.
Busy schedule coming up in the month of February, so stay tuned for that.
Mm-hmm. All right, this has been the SwishWire podcast. Justin, Mitchell, Scobie, Zach, Jay, and unfortunately Nick. I'm assuming his phone died. This has been the SwishWire podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed. Peace.
Hop on.